It's not what you make, it's what you keep that matters. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. Income doesn't tell the whole story, which is why when I recently released a video going over average income by age, inevitably I received a few comments saying net worth is a more appropriate measure of how you're doing financially. And that brings us to this video. But if you want to check out that other video, I will link it down below and above. And while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We just hit 50,000 subscribers and that's a huge milestone. Once every 3 years, the Federal Reserve does its survey of consumer finances, where they release all this data about consumer income, consumer spending, consumer debt levels, and net worth of Americans. The main purpose of this survey is to help the government and ultimately the public at large understand the financial condition of families in the United States. And I know these types of videos are incredibly popular. I've done them in the past based on previous data, and there's always comments from people saying you should do one of these videos every single year. But the data only comes out once every 3 years, so rightfully it can only be done once every 3 years. But the good news is the Federal Reserve released their recent survey of consumer finances at the end of October 2023. So we have an entirely new year's worth of new data, and that warrants a new video. First and foremost, before we dive in, let's take a moment to briefly talk about net worth. Net worth is simply everything you own, so your assets, minus everything you owe, so your liabilities or your debt. Your assets are going to include any accounts you have. Think checking, savings, investments, your retirement accounts. It's also going to include your home or any other properties you own or any other valuables you have. Your liabilities are going to be things that you owe debts on. Maybe it's a mortgage on your home, maybe it's an auto loan, student loans, consumer debts, credit cards, things like that. So now that we know what goes into a net worth, let's break it down by age and by percentile. We'll break it down by 25th percentile, median, or the 50th percentile, 75th percentile, the 90th percentile, and then the 99th percentile, or that top 1%. Let's start with the youngest adults up to age 29. Those in the 25th percentile have a net worth of almost nothing to a few $1,000s. The 50th percentile, $10,000 and $30,000 respectively. The 75th percentile is $34,000 for those under the age of 25 and $130,000 for those 25 to 29 years old. And those in the 90th percentile, $185,000 for those under 25, $300,000 for those 25 to 29, and the top 1% for those in their early 20s, it's about $650,000. And for those in their later 20s, it's already over $2 million. I don't think when you're in your 20s, the question you need to be focusing on is, what is my net worth? Simply because in your 20s, you're just starting out. Rather than focusing on hitting a specific net worth, I think what's more important at this age is developing habits. Developing that habit of setting aside a small portion for savings and a small bit for investments. If you develop this habit and then stick with it throughout the course of your entire lifetime, you will set yourself up for success. And the fact of the matter is, if you got started investing in your 20s, count yourself as lucky. So many people didn't start investing in their 20s because the concept of retirement seemed so far away, or perhaps they were still in school pursuing an advanced degree. And it can be really hard to invest meaningful sums if you haven't yet started your career with that paycheck. But the earlier you start, the better, because compound interest works best when given a really long runway. Simply look at the difference of investing $100 a month at different starting ages, starting at the age of 20, starting at the age of 25, or starting at the age of 30, and investing all the way up until the age of 65. Next, let's do the 30-year-olds. For the 25th percentile, it's $11,000 for those in their early 30s, and $16,000 for those in their upper 30s. For the median, $89,000 for those in their early 30s, and $139,000 for those in their later 30s. For the 75th percentile, $186,000 and $389,000 respectively. For the 90th percentile, $539,000 for those in their early 30s and $864,000 for those in their upper 30s. And for that top 1%, for those in their early 30s, it's over $2.5 million. And for the later 30 crowd, it's almost $5 million. The 30s are where you really start to see some big jumps. If you're looking at the median, the 75th percentile, the 90th percentile, and so on, you really start to notice net net worth take a snowball. The good news is that by the time you get to your 30s, most people have started investing. In fact, only about 11% of people actually start investing after the age of 46. And this really is good news because compounding works best when given a long time horizon. And a lot of the times you hear people say things like, "Oh, I wish I would have started investing sooner." If you started investing in your 30s, the good news is you still have a really long time horizon. The fact of the matter is most people work until they're in their 60s. So don't feel like you missed the boat if you waited until your 30s to get started. Yes, you may have to be a little bit more aggressive than if you had started in your 20s, but you still have a lot of time on your side in your 30s. And what about for those in their 40s? For the 25th percentile, for those in their early 40s, it's $24,000. For those in their later 40s, it's $48,000. For the median or the 50th percentile, for those in their early 40s, it's $134,000. And for those in the later half of this decade, it's $214,000. For those in the 75th percentile, it's $437,000 and $680,000 respectively. Then we get to the top 10%, that 90th percentile. For those aged 40 to 44, it's $1.2 million. And for those 45 to 49, it's $1.4 million. And for the top 1% of this group, it's $7.8 million for those in their early 40s and $8.7 million for those in the latter half of this decade. By the time you hit your 40s, hopefully you're starting to notice a snowball effect with your portfolio. At this point, you likely have a decade or so of investing under your belt. When you start investing, it's really you doing a lot of the legwork. It's your contributions that are growing your portfolio. But then there comes a point when you hit a certain threshold where you notice that compounding is starting to take over and it's doing the vast majority of the legwork. At this point, this is really where you notice your portfolio is starting to grow by leaps and bounds. But really and truthfully, it does take years to get to this point. I always liked what the late and great Charlie Munger said. The first $100,000 is a but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit. Now, is there anything specifically special about exactly $100,000? No, but it is around this time that you really start to notice the true effects of compounding, and this is the decade where most investors hit it. Next, we have the 50-year-olds. For those in the 25th percentile, in their early 50s, it's $54,000. For those aged 55 to 59, it's $85,000. For the median, for those in their early 50s, it's $266,000. For those in their later 50s, it's $321,000. For those in the 75th percentile, it's $913,000 and $1.1 million respectively. For those in the 90th percentile, for those aged 50 to 54, typical net worth is $2.5 million. For those 55 to 59, it's $2.7 million. And for the top 1%, it's $13 million and $15 million respectively. What's special about the 50s is that this is the decade that mints the most millionaires, as the average age for a millionaire is 57. And that's probably not what social media would have you believe. But the reality is, most people reach millionaire status after decades of hard work and investing. And if you look at the 75th percentile for this age range, that is when people hone in on or surpass that 7-figure threshold. And for those in their 60s, for those in the 25th percentile, in their early 60s, it's a net worth of $80,000. For those in their upper 60s, it's $69,000. For the 50th percentile, for those in their 60s, it's $393,000. For the 75th percentile, it's $1.1 million. For the top 10%, for all those in their 60s, it's $3 million. And for the top 1%, it's $18 million for those in their early 60s and $22 million for those in their upper 60s. Notice the trend of investing over time. If you're looking at that 25th percentile, it's increasing at a fairly steady clip over time. But if you're looking at the median, the 75th percentile, the 90th, and that 99th percentile, you really start to see these numbers go up exponentially over time. And that really speaks volume to the power of being invested for the long run. And what I find really fascinating is that these net worths really do speak volumes to the very low savings and investing rates that the vast majority of Americans have. Just look at the median figures. It's just under $400,000. Remember those compounding graphs that we showed in the beginning of investing just $100 a month? If you were to invest that amount over the course of an entire lifetime, you could surpass this threshold. And that's just with investable assets. Remember that the numbers displayed here also include the value of people's homes. And for many people, the value of their home represents a sizable portion of their net worth. So it really does show that most people are not investing consistently over the course of their entire life. Next, we have those in their 70s. For those in the 25th percentile, and for those in their early 70s, it's $125,000. For those in their upper 70s, it's $90,000. For the median, it's $439,000 and $338,000 respectively. For the 75th percentile, it's $1.2 million for those in their early 70s and just under $1 million for those in their upper 70s. And for the top 10%, it's $3 million. For the top 1%, it's $19 million and $20 million respectively. When we get to the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, we kind of start to notice something interesting happen. If you look at the median, the 75th percentile, and the 90th percentile, we kind of see that net worth hits a plateau. You know what else is coming right around the corner at this time of life? That's retirement. And having your net worth plateau or even decline a little bit once you hit retirement is totally fine. That's what you save for, so that you can fund your retirement. For many, I actually think this can be a difficult transition to make. From going your entire working career, setting aside, saving and investing a portion of your paycheck, to starting to withdraw in your portfolio and fund your lifestyle. I think it's going to be a difficult transition for me to make because I feel like I'm hardwired to be a saver. I actually get enjoyment out of saving and investing. But the goal isn't to die with the biggest bank account. The goal is to save up enough that you can fund the life you want. Plain and simple. But I still think for the saver investor types, this can be a difficult transition. Even if intellectually we know we're set, we've run the simulations, we've built a solid portfolio, I think emotionally it can be a difficult transition. Finally, we have those in their 80s and beyond. For the 25th percentile, it's $95,000. For the median, $327,000. For the 75th percentile, it's $944,000. For the top 10%, it's $2.5 million. And for the top 1% in this age range, it's a net worth of $16 million. There's one last table that I want to throw up here, and it's the average for every single age bracket and the median for the age brackets. And what's really interesting about the average is that it actually puts you near or above the 75th percentile at practically every age group. And that is simply because those in the top 10%, or probably specifically those in the top 1% category, have such high net worths compared to the rest of the group that they really pull this number upwards. But keeping in mind that the average actually puts you towards the 75th percentile or even beyond it really puts it into context. And that's why the median in and of itself is a better measure of what is typical, because the median is the exact middle. 50% have more than this and 50% have less than this figure. All the data in this video comes from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances as reported by the DQYDJ. And as always, I will provide a link down below in the description box if you're interested in checking it out. The site actually has a calculator where you can put in your net worth and see what percentile you do fall into in the US if that's something you're interested in. I'm going to make the same comment in this video that I made in the income video. It doesn't really matter what your net worth is relative to anyone else. That's not the most important question. Sure, it can be kind of fun to see these figures and see how you stack up next to your peers, but what matters most is that you're building a net worth that allows you to live the life that you want to live. Remember, money is just a tool. So when it comes to net worth, it really does you no good to compare yourself to anyone else. What matters most is that you're investing in a way that is going to allow you to hit your goals. And the best way to do it is to figure out your number. Figure out the actual amount invested you need to live the life you want. This is your financial freedom number. And once you hit this number, you've achieved financial freedom. It means you no longer have to depend on a paycheck. But the very first step is to figure out what this number is. Next, you want to create a budget and actually stick to it. A budget is what allows you to keep your expenses in check. You can't improve what you don't measure. A budget will ensure that you're taking a piece of your paycheck every single month and setting that aside towards investments. And really, that's the only way to grow your net worth, to actually be investing consistently over time. Because no matter what your level of income, if you don't put your money to work making money, you will never build wealth. You'll never achieve financial freedom. As people love to point out, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. It is possible to outspend at practically every income level and leave yourself with nothing left to invest. So make sure you're setting aside something to invest every single month. The best practice is to pay yourself first. You pay yourself first by investing, by sacrificing a little bit today so that future you can achieve financial freedom. And one of the most important things to keep in mind is that building your net worth takes time. It's something that you're going to be working on for years. Scratch that, decades. It doesn't happen overnight, so flex that patience muscle and stay the course. With that being said, how do you feel about your net worth? What are some of the goals you've set for yourself? Leave your thoughts in a comment down below. I will do another one of these videos in 3 years' time when new data is available. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.